back to the art and architecture, and a little bit of the flavor of the streets, from the foot massagers to the architecture of Kuala Lumpur. Islamic banking. You know, here in Bloomington, Indiana, or in the United States, we read comparatively little, whether it's in the Financial Times or in the Bloomington Herald Times, about Islamic banking. But it is something that has caught on in a great many countries across the Arab Muslim world. And what it amounts to, how you visualize it is one thing. That's the Sharia stock index being shown on the big board at the Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange. It's interesting because the Sharia index does not include companies that are involved in tobacco or alcohol. And banks do not charge interest, but they charge service fees. So I wanted to try to approach that in a visual way. And, you know, as a father of two daughters, when we get inside the family, as a father of two daughters who was watching, you know, I could identify with the gentleman on the right whose two daughters were about to go off into the night with their boyfriends. And that several cultures at once that young people in Southeast Asia find themselves a part of. And I think it's important for us to recognize that. My book was banned in Brunei for this rather innocuous picture of what we could probably call the boy-girl thing, the young people sharing a moment of affection in a country where this is frowned upon in public. One of the two fatwas on my book, and again, I think it's what we do is to be a faithful witness to what we see. This woman is a prostitute. She's also a Muslim, hiding in the shadows of Kuala Lumpur. And I intentionally tried to make the picture so that she wouldn't be identified, but nevertheless, she is a prostitute. And these contradictions, which I think are not unique to the Muslim world, but I think is important to talk about, this was one of the reasons the fatwa. And, you know, I underplay the violence only because it defines such an infinitesimal part of what I see as this larger Islamic or Muslim world of Southeast Asia, certainly. Yes, there are the jihadists. These kids were demanding a jihad or a holy war against Christians in the Maluku Islands. And there has been, certainly in Indonesia, there have been conflicts. In fact, these guys beat me up and broke one of my cameras for getting a little bit too close to them. But interestingly, we find Muslim against Muslim in a case like this. The police are also Muslims. I was interested in globalization and how this modern world is setting upon traditional societies. The fisherman along the South China Sea, sending his son off to a very uncertain future. And the history, as I said, Islam came to Southeast Asia not by conquest, but by trade. And we, looking at some of the tombstones of Islamic rulers of the Sultanate of Aceh during the 14th and 15th centuries. I'm watching the time here. I'll go real fast. I'll go even faster to something more pertinent. Back to the, you know, just the people. I remember talking to this woman in Cambodia, and I asked her about the time of the Khmer Rouge, 1975 to 1970. Was it 79 that the Vietnamese invaded and threw out the Khmer Rouge? And I asked her, what was it like for you to be a Muslim? And she said, if you prayed at 4, you were dead by 7. That people who practiced their faith in any way, shape, or form were rounded up by the Khmer Rouge and killed. And, you know, 800,000 Cham Muslims perished. There are about 100,000 today in Cambodia, including with their own Muslim schools again, and this was near Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia. And I'm interested in history. This gentleman had made 8 pilgrimages to Mecca, to the Hajj, and he was still tending his fields in Indonesia. And I mentioned, and I'll just sort of wrap it up there, that what is not always politically correct to say as a journalist, but again, being faithful to the facts, is how syncretic, what a combination of the Islamic faith can be, particularly in Indonesia, where elements of Buddhism and Hinduism have been incorporated into the rituals and the practices. To say this is to invite a good deal of argument, except perhaps among academics. But the wedding ritual on the island of Lombok, which is near Bali, if any of you can picture that vacation destination of Bali, and here we clearly have the rituals of Hinduism involved in the marriage ceremony. So we could talk all afternoon, but I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor for trying to frame an enormous story in terms of the people and the many facets of their lives that are touched by their faith, and where their faith may define how parts of their lives, but again, how peaceful this part of the world is, how compatible Southeast Asia is, for the most part, to democracy, with some notable exceptions. And I'll just leave it at there. Thank you very much, okay?
Support for Voices and Visions comes from the Social Science Research Council, the SSRC, leading innovation in the social sciences and educating the next generation of social science researchers.